Jasmine, welcome to the podcast.
I am so happy to be here.
Are you at your house? It looks, for those watching on video, that's a really cool room.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I am at home. I am at my very quaint home in Newport Beach, California.
Oh, that's a great place to be living too. We are in the age of home-based businesses, aren't we?
Oh, completely and totally. And I love it.
Well, I want to talk to you about your journey. We live in a really fascinating time. What were you doing before things took off on Instagram for you?
Well, I dropped out of law school in 2005 when my mom was diagnosed with brain cancer, and it was a really hard time in life. But I do believe that everything you go through is preparing you for the life and success that you are daring yourself to believe is capable for yourself. And I'm happy to say that, years later, I am still lucky and fortunate to be able to call my mom and text my mom because against all odds, she is a walking miracle. She had battled valiantly for 9 years and the doctor said it was time for us to start planning her funeral. Wow. So it was a really tough time. I quit school. I moved back home. I just needed to be with my mom. And I really wanted to get married to my high school sweetheart. We'd been dating 9 years at this time. And I said, my mom, I just want her to see one of her children get married. So we planned a wedding in less than 3 months. And against all odds, she walked me down the aisle. She was not walking. She wasn't talking. She was completely bedridden. And she walked me down the aisle with a bald head and palsy. And my father helping her walk me down the aisle. Best day of my life. And that was the first day that I realized the fragility of life. Life is short. And my mom wasn't, spending what we thought her last days is thinking about all the things she did. She was thinking about all the things she didn't do. And that was the first time that I realized that we have the capability of pursuing a wild, crazy dream that nobody else could believe in. But when you are at the end of your life, you think about the things that you didn't do, not the things that you did. And so we got back from our honeymoon and my brand new husband, I think we'd been married maybe 2 weeks at this point in time. And I get a letter from UCLA Law School saying, it's time for you to come back and get your scholarships because I had left school the year before to be with my mom. And I said, I was so sad and miserable there. And my husband asked me the nicest question anybody could ever ask a partner. And he said, if you could do one thing for the rest of your life and be happy, what would it be? And I said, I want to be a photographer. And he said, okay, but you don't even have a camera. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, but if I had a camera, I really think I can make it work. And I think that this is crazy. And he said, I would rather see you fail at something you love than succeed at something you hate. So how about for 1 year, you just try it. And if it doesn't work, go back to law school. And I gave it a try for a year and the business took off. And by 2009, I was voted one of the top photographers in the world.
No way.
Yeah, it's crazy.
What drew you to law? I'm a former attorney as well. What drew you to law school?
I am a first generation Latina. My parents are immigrants. My father's from Mexico. My mom's from Puerto Rico. And first generation Latina, first generation college student. And I wanted to make my family proud. And I really felt like having a legal degree was going to empower me to give a voice to the voiceless, to go ahead of people who maybe were overlooked or underrepresented or lost in the legal system. I was very idealistic and ain't got a thing that years later, the thing I wanted to do with a legal degree, I'm still able to do. I'm still able to help the lost or the underrepresented or help people find a voice. It might not be within the legal system, but within their businesses. And I'm like, ain't got a trip. Yes, I will take that. So now that I'm not stuck in some corner office in downtown Los Angeles, but cozy in sweatpants in my home in Newport Beach doing the same dang thing. So yes.
That's awesome. So it's interesting. You say you were miserable in law school. I'm just curious about that because there's a lot of people who really endure. I actually loved law school. It was fun and got called out of it, but to do a variation of what I'm doing now. But what made law tough for you? Because there's a lot of people, a lot of leaders listening who are in a dead-end job and they hate it. They're making bank, they're doing something and they're like, I feel like these are chains. Why did you hate law school?
I hated law school because, there is the literal things of why I hated law school, and then there's the emotional. And the literal reasons I hated law school was because I completely felt so out of the scene. I was oftentimes one of the only females in the room. I was way more than often the only person with melanin in my skin. I came from a really underrepresented area. You know, it's like my parents met and started their family in East Los Angeles, and I went to one of the top schools in the nation in West Los Angeles. And for people who are unfamiliar with the demographics of California, you are literally going from East Los Angeles, the brownest and blackest of neighborhoods, completely unsavory, to going to West Los Angeles, where the cars and the people are so much more European looking. So you are going to like the Beverly Hills and the Bel Air. And I felt completely out of the loop. When people were doing bar review, did you have bar review at your school? Where every Thursday night, okay, so bar review at UCLA is every Thursday. Everybody would meet at a bar and review the bar, but like tongue in cheek, bar review is how you study for the bar test.
Oh, no, we weren't nearly that cool, but that sounds like fun. That sounds like fun.
Of course, and you know what? A lot of people had fun, and I just was never really invited. And so I found myself eating lunch a lot by myself. I found myself just like really floating solo, and you know, it had nothing to do. It was partly me, and it was partly the people there at school. So I feel like there was a lot of reasons why it was not a good fit for me. And so when my mom, you know, when the time came for us to make funeral arrangements, it was just so clear and easy. And I'm like, not only am I tired, stressed, and overwhelmed, and I always feel like I'm on the periphery and I'm never on the center and nobody's really talking to me, I just became really depressed. And that's when I knew I needed to take a step back.
And photography, you knew nothing about it. 4 years later, you're one of the best in the world, voted.
Yeah.
So what was that? What did you start shooting? And then we're going to get to Instagram and social media. But I'm always interested in people's trajectory, because have you noticed this? Very few people, Jasmine, start out and say, this is my plan. This is exactly what I'm going to do. Step 1, step 2. We always back into what we end up doing. Isn't it weird that way?
Yes. And I believe that as technology advances, is that we are going to continue iterating. And like where your grandparents or my grandparents were able to pivot, 2 or 3 times in their life, I believe that I still have 10 pivots left in me, 20 pivots left in me. So I do believe that as the world changes, is that we are given gifts and tools, things like Instagram and Facebook and technology and new social platforms that are going to allow us to iterate within our lives and careers. And only the daring and only the crazy and only the wise will step up to the challenge.
So I know that this could be a whole podcast in and of itself, but when you think about your photography trajectory, what were some launch points in that where you're like, okay, I looked at like 2 or 3 that you're like, okay, this was a turning point for me in my career in photography?
Number 1 was getting paid to be a photographer, right? Because it's like, just because, the barriers to entry to becoming a professional photographer are literally none. The same way the barriers to entry to becoming a cook or a chef are none. Do you have a knife? Do you have a spatula? Do you have a camera? You can go and do the thing, right? So everybody who has a camera believes they have the propensity to be a photographer. I too was one of the fold. And a turning point for me was when somebody gave me $1,000 to shoot their wedding. And then I was like, whoa, things just got real serious for me. A second turning point was understanding the power of not just clients, but friends and family of clients who will then become endorsers and evangelists of your business. Because I was learning quickly the tools of the trade. Number 1, word of mouth. And then number 2, this is like back in like 2008, 2009, word of mouse. The clicks that people were able to share my content really became an avalanche.
So you built a website out and that became
completely
viral?
Completely.
So what happened, right? Because I mean, in photography, and I know a lot of photographers, we all know a lot of photographers, because you're right, there's no barrier to entry. It's like I bought a camera, I'm using my phone, and there's always someone who will do it cheaper, right? Like you charge $1,000 or $10,000 to do a wedding. There's someone down the road who will do it for half that, 1/10 of that. And how did you differentiate yourself in photography?
I really like this conversation because I did start off shooting a wedding for $1,000, and then towards a decade later, I was charging $20,000.
Wow.
Same person. Most of the time shooting with the same camera, not when I first started, but like in year 3, I got a certain type of camera, and I continued using that camera because I believe
there's diminishing returns, right? You don't need more gear.
Absolutely. And so what then became the defining factor wasn't necessarily the art I produce, but the artist. Like, we don't choose cakes, we choose the baker. We don't choose a curriculum, we choose the teacher. And that is like the foundation of every strong business owner. If we're talking about a pastor, a course creator, a life coach, we're choosing the vehicle. We're not choosing the destination, because that then changes our experience with that. And that has become a game changer in every iteration of my business.
Okay. I love this conversation too. So help us unpack that a little bit. I think you're onto something. How do you mean that, right? Because, okay, so what made you, why do I need Jasmine to do my wedding? What are the factors in that? Like, I can think of, I don't know a whole lot of photographers, but I can think of a few people. It's like, I want this person to shoot this. So what is bound up in that when you can hire someone for a 10th of the price?
Oh, you can hire somebody for 100th of the price. Yeah, that's just real talk. Like, we're like in the digital age. Like, this is like truth of it. And so I'm lucky to say that I could speak to this from derivatives of my photography career, and then that as a business strategist.
Take it where you want to take it.
Is there were brides who were hiring me because of the perceived result. I and every good entrepreneur is in the business of transformation, not in the business of methodology, product, or service. So I am talking to brides, and the quote unquote transformation I'm giving them is me documenting their day in a way that nobody else can. Why? Because I see it differently. I hear it differently. Not only am I turning over photos, I'm turning over a slideshow, I'm turning over a blog post, I'm curating a story about their day. And me as the quote unquote writer by way of photos then became the reason why I was the person that they had to work with. And let me just break it to everybody. I am a proud averager. I'm average. I'm not special. There were other photographers who were more talented, who charged less and had better customer service. And people still went out of their way to pay top dollar. Why? Because I was in the business of creating an experience. I was and am and forever will be average at everything I do. But what is unparalleled is my ability to continue to get up day after day after day and produce work that people say, she is the person that I want to work with. Then when we started working with magazine editors and doing shoots, the reason why an art director was choosing us, because they knew come hell or high water, we were going to show up 10 minutes early. We were going to stay 10 minutes longer. We were going to create an experience. We were going to under-promise and over-deliver. That is how we got into the top markets when it came to artistic work. Now that we've transitioned into facilitating business owners and entrepreneurs how to build their business, I know I am one of 1 million other business strategists out there. And why do people continue to follow and invest is because I am average. And I show that really average people can get remarkable results when they continue to, number one, show up, number two, remain consistent in the dark days, in the hard days, and number three, create experiences and show up who they are to connect with customers far differently than their competition.
Okay. That's really good. We're going to pivot to Instagram in just a minute, but I want to ask one more question around photography.
You know, people are listening right now. They're like, you keep on saying we're pivoting, but I love all these, like, where all these branches of this conversation, because Instagram, I hate to break it to you, it's going to change in 2 months. And then it's going to change in 3 months. So we're setting the foundation to the core foundation that doesn't change as Instagram changes. So you go on with your bad self. We're getting to the good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. No, you're right. The foundations are so critical on this one. And that's why I want to ask. So, what were some of the distinctives in your photography? Obviously, it was you showing up early, staying late, getting it done, hustle, right? For this podcast, 5 years going, we've never missed a Tuesday. And in the early days, some of that was, okay, we were on the phone at 3:00 in the morning going, why won't this thing upload? Or maybe it was 5 a.m., but still, you know what I mean? Like you hustle. But you had to get national attention, you had to be doing a few things a little bit differently that made people go, wow, that was like the finished product had to be an experience. So what was different?
I feel like I'll probably take a little bit of an issue with it. It wasn't the product that was differentiated. It was the way that the product was presented that was differentiated. So when we go back to to 2007, 2008, when I started my business, I didn't have any money. I didn't have any resources. I didn't have the tools. I had just the body of the camera. I had no lenses. I had no memory cards. I was renting them because, hey, shout out to Dave Ramsey, I didn't want to go into debt.
Yes.
So I would get commissioned for a job and then use the money to rent out the gear that I had. And I started the freest form of marketing at the time that was available, and that was a blog. And a lot of photographers were just like, well, that's ridiculous. Why do you have a blog? You're a photographer. But I took the resources that I had that were for free and created conversations around that. So was my photography different? No. Was the mechanism in the way that I shared it? Yes. I did the same thing again and again when it came down to also Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok. I am there to leverage whatever free marketing is available for me and put out content where my customers are. I am not emotionally tied to the vehicle. I am just saying, where are you? I'm going to put my content on where you dwell to make it easy and to make my work knowable. And that has become the linchpin to every iteration of my success.
Okay, that's interesting. So Instagram comes along when for you? What year?
Oh, goodness. Late 2011, early 2012.
Yeah, I think that's when I joined too. Do you remember, nobody remembers this, Hipstagram? Like Instagram had a rival.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Hipstagram. And I was on both for a while.
Absolutely. And, during that time, this is a platform that's made for people who are visual, right? And so there's a lot of people just using it out, and it gave freedom with your iPhone. And then what it turned into was what people were not expecting whatsoever. And it became a division of your online portfolio, a division of your online brand, and as a way to extend your message. So game changer.
How did you, because Instagram is one of the main things you do now, right? You would say, is that one of your main platforms?
I feel like it has become easy for people to say like, oh, Jasmine's like an Instagram guru. But if people paid close attention, I do have a very similar following on Facebook, a very similar following on Twitter. I have growing on YouTube. I literally do spend time in all of these platforms because I go to where my dream customers are, not where I like to spend most of my time. But if I had to choose a platform that I'm spending the most of the time on right now, yes, it is Instagram.
Okay, that's a new phrase to me, dream customer. Never ever heard it. People talk about avatars. People talk about Target.
I can't stand the word avatar. Like, it makes me think of like blue people running around in a fictional land. Like, no, this is not superheroes. I hear like your target demographic, which is fine, but like who I'm largely speaking to, and like in like the church world, in the course creator world, maybe you might not use dream customer, but it could be like, who do you want sitting in your pews? Who do you want buying your program? Like, it's very important because dream customer is just so easy and understandable. That's what I defer to.
That's a really interesting. So who is your dream customer? Paint us a picture.
Oh, we could talk about this. Oh, I'm speaking to Elle. Elle lives in Newport Beach with her husband, who's a lawyer, and they met while they were in college. They have two sons, 5 and 7. She drives a white Range Rover, lives in Manhattan Beach, and is a full-time mom starting her side hustle. But her side hustle has been carefully curated based on her childhood experiences growing up on her father's goat farm in Ojai, California, where she would collect dried flowers. And then later in college, moved into a downtown loft where she would create goat's milk soap and press flowers in the top of them and began selling them at Manhattan Beach Farmers Market. It was there at her Manhattan Beach Farmers Market where she ran into a buyer from Anthropology who said that they were having a pop-up shop at the Beverly Center and asked if Elle would be willing to participate in the pop-up shop. Where Elle meets me is understanding she needs to elevate her brand and she needs to extend her marketing on social media, and she's looking for somebody to help her do just that.
Oh my goodness. That's incredible, Jasmine. How long did it take you to focus in on Elle? Like, because the classic marketer mistake is, I want to reach everybody, right? And you don't. I just interviewed Jenny Allen, and she's like, it's the mom in the front row who got babysitting for 2 days to be here at this event, and she's not very happy in her marriage. I'm paraphrasing, Jenny. If I get it wrong, let me know. I'm just going off memory. And she's sitting there in the front row and she's hanging on for hope. And I'm like, there's a woman who knows her audience. I'm talking to you. You know your audience. So how did you develop Elle?
Well, as a business strategist, this is what I tell every entrepreneur is if you don't know who you're targeting, you're never going to reach the person that you want to work with. Now, one point of clarification is that when you become everything to all people, you become nothing to no one. And I know that that's very hard to hear. Now, here's the thing. When Jenny talks about the woman sitting in the front row, and when I speak about Elle, I understand that my message to Elle resonates with a lot more people. I am not selling to one person. I am only speaking to one person. And when you speak with such specificity and clarity, it automatically opens doors to other people who may not resonate on the same level, but the way which I'm speaking to my dream customer, then that opens lots of doors. So how long does it take for this to happen? Well, I could also talk to you about Chloe. Chloe was my dream photography customer.
Right.
Every iteration. I had Taylor. Taylor was my dream customer when I was creating an online course for Instagram, which no, I'm not pitching it because I'm no longer selling it. But at the time, with every product and service and offering, I'm creating a dream customer and what this person wants to feel, know, and buy on the internet. So my iteration for Elle began for me in 2016 and 2017 as we created Social Curator. Social Curator is where my happy place is as an entrepreneur because I get to do online education. I get to speak about social media. I get to do coaching and I get to create a community of wild hustlers who, even though I am speaking to Elle, 0.0001% of members on the inside of Social Curator are Elle. But somehow, over 7,000 people every month seem to be resonating with that same message.
Isn't that interesting, right? And I think that's the great fear because people want to stick with everybody because, well, Elle sounds really geographic and specific and like white Range Rover. If you actually look at the vehicle market, that probably is 0.001% of the vehicle market, right? And she's doing what? Goat milk? Like whatever, I'm not into.
Yes,
so,
goat's milk soap.
And,
yes,
so you're like, whoa, that is so specific. And yet, I have an ideal listener in mind here. It's not quite that specific, but it is a leader of a mid-sized organization that's really struggling with time management and burnout and married kids, trying to be a good dad, trying to figure this out and just suffering from a time famine. And wishes he had access to some of the top leaders today, but doesn't have that kind of access. So that's sort of like my little poorly defined avatar dream customer.
It's not a poorly defined. I would encourage you to add a few things that most people think are nuanced and ridiculous. But watch this. If you were to, does he have a name?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
So you need a name.
Give him a name because he becomes like your friend, somebody you want to take care of and help. Number two, if you have him placed in a specific geographic area, you could speak to the nuances of his or her life. Coastal, city, small town, aspirational, middle America. What are that struggle like? And then when you give him a partner, how many children, the type of car he drives, because the type of car that a person drives indicates socioeconomically where they are. And you could speak to the types of shows that they watch, the stores that they shop in, and the struggles that they go through specifically for that demographic. Those nuances, wow, it really changes the way that you approach them. You speak to them.
No, that really does. You're challenging me here in a really good way. So I'm gonna just push back. I'm gonna speak on behalf of the listeners and say, okay, that's great. So you're West Coast. I mean, you could not create a more California avatar than the one that you've created. I mean, that does not play in Iowa, in Illinois, in Texas. Probably doesn't really work in New England. It might work in Florida, but not really. And so, yet I assume you have a national audience. Fair enough?
International, yes.
International audience. So why does that translate?
When you speak to one person, it also speaks to a longing and a desire in somebody else.
Right. Okay.
And so what happens is when I make references to walking on the beach, I know that 1% of my audience will ever have that experience. But the desire for that does. And when I speak about Elle's frustration about knowing that this is the thing she's supposed to do, and even though her partner supports her, he's the one covering all of the bills. If you live in a zip code of 90210, or if you live in a zip code of 82611, or whatever, like the emotional vacancy with having a partner who says you could do it but doesn't really believe in you is the same in Florida, Idaho, California, or Zimbabwe. When I could speak to the emotional needs and desires of customers and I can sell the transformation living on the coast, middle America, or in New Zealand, then we're playing a different game.
So is the husband kind of dismissive of Elle, like half supportive or fully supportive, or?
No, he's totally supportive, but he's also the breadwinner. She's not profitable. And so he's only taking the kids on the weekends, which gives her about a full day a week to create her content, to plan her social media, to show up at the farmer's market. So he's all about it, but he also knows right now it's just an expensive hobby. And she's just like, give me the time to make it a business. I could speak to that. And oh my goodness, the people that I speak to resonate with having somebody who loves them and supports them, doesn't really get them, and they can't justify the time and the investment because they're not even on the upside of making money yet.
Now, Jasmine, this is so good because I've tried to have more and more women on my podcast and be a student of that. I think you get the emotional makeup. I'm not trying to make gender prognostications here, but I don't think men do as good a job as tapping into the emotional vein that I hear you doing. Can you talk about that a little bit? How significant is that? How meaningful is that? And what does that actually produce in terms of being able to reach an audience?
I have to tell you, like straight up, if you were to put me in a boardroom and you made me the chief marketing officer for an all male brand selling athletic wear, cigars, and like back scratching tools, I would kill the game. Because we are all emotional creatures and we want to be understood. And what's happened is that social media has only magnified the chasm of constantly feeling on the outside and misunderstood. My only objective as a business owner is to understand the emotional desire and then sell a solution and or transformation to their people's darkest pain or wildest pleasures. And so if we as business owners aren't taking the time to understand what our customer is wanting, desiring, or going through, or has aspirations or desires for, we're totally missing the mark. So this is why I always go back to step number one. We must know who we're speaking to, and we must know what they absolutely want on a literal perspective and on an emotional perspective. If I was selling athletic shoes, what I'm literally selling is running shoes. On emotion, what am I selling emotionally? Lifestyle, hope, desire, aspiration, the feeling of feeling athletic, even though you're sitting on the couch. I know what I'm selling from an emotional perspective. And when you know how to sell from an emotional perspective, your competition remains in the dark ages. That is literally how it's been.
I think this is a Seth Godin thing. I'm just finishing up This Is Marketing, which is an incredible book. But Seth Godin talks about, if you're trying to sell a hammer, all right. So imagine hanging pictures in your house and you're selling to a guy. It's like, are you really selling the hammer or the nail? And then some marketers would say, no, I'm selling the whole, like we're actually selling the whole. And Seth would take it further and say, no, you're not selling that. You're selling the feeling that happens when the picture is hung and it's straight and you sit back and you look at that picture and you know that you did it. And you feel a sense of accomplishment. And as a guy, I get that because I'm not like, I have no gifts. I'm in ministry, so I have no actual talents or skills. And, if I manage to hang a picture straight, like I feel pretty good about that. You're talking about that kind of thing. How do you mine? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hold on. I'm going to take it one up because listen, you could take the girl out of the hood. You can't take the hood out of the girl. I'm not selling the picture being hung. I'm selling the mansion. I am telling, if you don't have the capacity, and I mean this in every business I have ever created, if I can't sell you the vision of the mansion, I can't sell you the hammer.
Wow. So explain that. What do you mean by that?
Okay. So for instance, what happens is when you want to sell a hammer and your biggest competition really knows how to sell the emotion of selling the picture, my objective is to come out and say, the picture's great. But what would it feel like to help build the house? How you stick out in a saturated market is to look at what the best people are doing and saying, how do I do the impossible? How do I look at what people are not talking about and then reverse engineer how to sell the vision of creating a house, not just hanging a picture? That is what really differentiates the people who do massive things, is taking it like a Seth Godin idea and then making it even bigger. That's what you have to start doing specifically on social media, because now everybody has a megaphone. The megaphones back in the 1940s, 50s, 60s was like the digital marketing agencies had the megaphone. The radio had the megaphone and the TV had the megaphone.
Yep.
Movies had the megaphone. If you did not have any one of those 4 quadrants, you didn't stand a chance. And then all of a sudden social media comes in and we all have our own megaphones. And all of a sudden the same messaging that was coming from TV and radio, that's really powerful. And that's what people are using on their megaphone. So they're trying to reinvent the message on a megaphone. And I'm like, yo, the only way your megaphone is going to be heard is if you take what you have, do it entirely differently, and sell an entirely bigger vision that has never been spoken about before.
Isn't that fascinating? How did you get to know Elle? How did you frame her? Did you just talk to your clients long enough to figure out who she was? Did you create the dream client in your head? Like, can you walk us through that? Because I think there's a lot of people, and we have business leaders and preachers and all kinds of people going, and as a communicator, I need to get into the head of my audience. And I speak a lot in principles, but principles don't do that. It's a life situation. It's the story connection. It's the, hey, you were thinking about walking out on her on Wednesday, weren't you? That kind of like direct talk that gets people going, oh, how did you know? Or you were going to put in your resignation last Monday, weren't you, when you were so frustrated because you felt awful about the weekend? How do you get into that head? How do you create that? Walk us through it. Coach us.
So we can actually have, we might have to do like part 2 of this because this is like really going in depth. However, I do have a quick solution and then give like the nutshell version of it.
Okay.
JasmineStar.com/ideal client. What this includes is 2 videos. It's free. It's 2 videos and then a list of adjectives and a prompting to write a story about your dream customer. So it's literally, think about this as fill in the blanks, Mad Lib style, just to get your wheels turning. And then what we do is we include a series of 25 questions for people to answer just to get it going. Because I do know that it takes a little bit of time. So what we do on the inside of our team. We'll
link to that in the show notes, guys, by the way.
Okay, thank you. So what we will do is we come up with a series of questions very similar to what I asked you. Name, where they live, the nuances. And then what we try to do is we try to take those things and we have given a templated story to kind of say like, oh, this is who this person is. Because I promise you, it's like creating a pearl. If I just give you a piece of sand, can you build on it and build on it and build on it? And over time, you start adding pieces. So randomly, somebody stood up, 2,000 people, I'm speaking, and he says, Jasmine, what kind of car does Elle's dad drive? And I said, oh, 1954 Ford truck. And it just came to me because she was in me, and the story of her going through her father's goat farm, he wouldn't be driving a Lexus. He'd have an old tanker. Yeah. And that's how he goes. And all of a sudden that became part of the story. And so the more that you talk about this person and the more that you know who this mid-level manager is and the struggles and like how he really wants to be a coach of his son's soccer team, and his superior is asking him to finish the numbers, all of a sudden you can speak so differently to him. And then you could also probably tell the kind of car he drives and the kind of car his wife wants to drive. And that becomes telling, right? So it's like there's these things that you just keep on adding. I know, right? I know.
Yeah, this is fun. This is really, really good because this is real life for everybody, right?
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so we will link to that in the show notes, and I'm definitely going to fill that out. That's great. But we're going to,
if you don't mind, I want to stop here just for 1 second as we go into Instagram. But now every time I post something on Instagram, I ask myself, does this resonate with Elle? Does Elle know me more? Does Elle like me more? And does Elle trust me more? Because when you have an Instagram follower who knows you, likes you, and trusts you, that will then lead to conversations. And conversations on Instagram exist in your direct messages and in comments. And when people start creating conversations, conversations lead to trust, and trust leads to conversions. When people say, I don't know how to get customers, I don't know how to get more followers, I don't know how to get people in the pews more, it's because they don't know, like, and trust you. Your objective on Instagram shouldn't be for the sale. It should be for conversations that lead to trust. Then that leads to conversions.
Right. Okay. And that's really important. High trust. I think trust is the new currency, particularly online. Are you a trusted communicator? And trust is 2 things. It's confidence. And then it also gets down to that personal level. Do I actually like you? Like, are you a good person? Are you worth following? You have hundreds of thousands of followers, right? On probably, pushing 1 million when you add all the platforms together. How do you keep up with that level of conversation? How do you engage that many DMs or that many comments on your posts? Because you have to be getting thousands a week.
I want to make sure that before I answer this, people will self-qualify or put themselves into certain buckets. Somebody once described that there are 3 types of CEOs. There's the marketing CEO, there's the culture CEO, and then there's the product CEO. Examples, Steve Jobs, product.
Yeah.
There's marketing CEO, like Gary Vaynerchuk, and there's the culture CEO, which is the CEO of like Starbucks, Southwest, right?
Yes.
Martha Stewart, right? We're going towards that direction. I squarely reside in the marketing CEO role.
Yeah, I was going to guess.
So as a result of knowing what my strengths are, I double down on conveying a message that nobody is better at than me. There are some other CEOs that do not fall in that, and that's okay. Your objective then would be to cast the vision and then put the right person in the right seat or the right team to deploy on that.
Yeah.
So I do not think that everybody should do it this way. I can only speak to that. So now that I've pre-qualified myself as being a marketing CEO, I know that I can convey a message better than anybody else on my team. I can't build a system if my life depended on it. So I hire for my weaknesses and I keep my strengths. So I make communication part of my job. Like most of what I'm doing every day is creating content and responding to those relationships.
Wow.
And so I have designated times. Like it is very common for me. I'm an early riser. I wake up every morning at 4:30. That's just naturally what time I do. And I'm already responding to DMs between 5 and 5:30. And I'm responding to comments in the middle of the day. I check in to all of my social platforms 3 times a day and I just time block. And I say, I'm going to do the best I can given this time. And the minute these 30 minutes are over, then I'm doing something else. Can I respond to every single comment? Probably not, but I do my dang best. I do the same thing on LinkedIn. I'm checking in there. I'm checking in on YouTube, making sure that I'm responding. Because at the time of this recording, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are all based on an algorithm that responds well to your engagement when people leave comments. So if you want more comments, you have to leave comments and then you have to respond to the comments that people are actually leaving in a timely manner so that Instagram looks and says, oh, hey, this person's responding. We want to keep this engagement because Instagram's only objective isn't to be cool. Instagram's objective is to keep people on the platform, period. And you are rewarded if your account keeps people on the platform.
Oh, that's interesting. And that's more than just liking. That's actually like hitting reply and that kind of thing, right?
1,000%. And at the current time of this recording, the most valuable thing you could do with algorithmically is for having somebody save your post. Saves are now weighted more than 4 words, more than 4 comments, more than 4 words.
So tell me what that, I don't think I've ever saved anybody's post. And I'm on Instagram every day. Really?
Okay. So, my gosh. So they created this save feature about 2 years ago when Pinterest was on the rise.
I didn't know what to do with it.
Because when you create content that people want to revisit and don't want to lose, they didn't have a way to indicate how to do that. So now what Instagram's done is in the lower right-hand corner, just below the photo or the video, you will see almost like a flag. You press the flag and you could start creating files for like inspiration, sports, DIY. And it's essentially Pinterest inside of Instagram. It's fascinating. And you can go to your analytics according to like a post and you could see how many people saved your post. So your objective is to really push at least right now, really start putting out content that people want to come back and revisit, which at this point in time would be helpful, inspirational, or educational content.
Is that the little, like it looks like a ribbon? Like you just got a ribbon at the fair?
Okay, yeah. I said a flag, but a ribbon.
Okay,
yes,
I actually, hey, different perspectives.
I like that. No,
awesome.
I'm so glad you said that. Yes.
Okay, good. Well, and then how do you, I've never heard anyone say save this post. Maybe that's because...
Because Instagram, it just came out 2 months ago.
2 months ago, okay.
No. The flag has been there. The ribbon, has been there a while. But Instagram, when they started removing likes, people were saying they started removing likes in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and they're slowly rolling it out here in the States. And people were saying, yes, but how are we going to know what is actually valued? And people can still like your post, but Instagram said, for people who are saving posts, this means that when you save it, you will go back to it. If you're going back to it, you're spending more time on the platform, which is exactly what Instagram wants.
Oh, that's cool. All right, that's neat. That's good to know. Wow, see, you learn something new every day. And that is a constantly changing game. So I know we're wrapping up. We're coming close to the end of the conversation today. So let me ask you this question, and it's a really important marketing question. As you already indicated, you don't own Instagram, you don't own Facebook, you don't own LinkedIn or even TikTok. I mean, it's all Twitter. It's all algorithmically driven now, which literally means somebody in Silicon Valley goes, we're going to change the algorithm, and you could lose 80% of your exposure overnight, which has actually happened with Facebook back at the beginning of 2018 when Zuckerberg made a massive change, and they're continually doing that. So as an entrepreneur and as a business owner yourself, what are you doing to make sure that you can have direct contact with your dream customers, with your clients, that nobody can really take away? What are sort of what is the hallmark of that for you? Because you're right. For a while it was photography. Now it's Instagram and coaching and speaking and so on and so forth, and you're podcasting and the whole deal. But how do you safeguard that? Because I think this is important for all of us who want to connect with people.
Absolutely. I look at my marketing endeavors like an Easter egg basket. The more eggs I have in the basket, the less bummed I will feel if one of them breaks. And so I do not think that all social platforms will change all at the same time. The importance is to diversify your portfolio. So in addition to my social endeavors, I am blogging 4 times a week so that I am ensuring that my SEO is still robust and still ready to go. I also am actively growing a newsletter list because the things that I own are my blog, my website, and my newsletter list. And on August 18th, 2018, Facebook and Instagram went down for almost a full day, and people lost their dang minds. Right? Like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, this is like a wake up call, y'all. Like I am not building just on Instagram. I'm building on everything and on the next platform, because I don't think that Instagram is going to be the thing in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
At all. So I am not trying to build a business on a single platform. I'm trying to diversify the portfolio, trying to put more eggs in the Easter basket. And when people hear this, their knee-jerk reaction is to be like, oh, not another thing. And with that perspective, it's going to be a slow go. When you have another opportunity to market your business for free, where people are spending their time, you should clap that up, because our grandparents would have given the right arm to have the access and the exposure that we have. And far be it from us forever to complain that we have the ability to build the business of our dreams for pennies. I would say, check your heart. Check your heart. We are too blessed to be stressed. Get busy.
Okay, this is fascinating to me, because you've gone to 3 things, or a couple things, that are not very sexy or current. Blogging, and by newsletter, I take it you mean email list. So I still blog. Yes. I had somebody say to me, people still blog? I'm like, you have no idea how much traction blogs get. And your email list, right? Your email list is really, really important. And I think often in marketing, our eyes go to the latest and the trendiest and how do I grow followers, all of which is important. But I've learned if I want to directly connect with people, that blogging, podcasting, and emails, which so far are not algorithmically driven,
right?
That is what really connects with people. What's your experience been with that?
That has been 100% the case. And here's the thing. The reason why you can get such robust and deep connections by way of emails, blog posts, and newsletters is because it's so hard to grow. People cannot, people have complained for years. It's so difficult to get your podcast noticed because there isn't like an algorithm. There isn't a way. I mean, lately it's been a little bit easier to share, but people have to go out of their way. They have to seek. And when they seek, they've already committed. They've already said, I want to hear more from you in a very different way. And I am telling you, the most ardent supporters, the quickest buyers, the most staunch customers come by way newsletter, blog, and podcast.
So everybody who's got a message to get out there, pay attention. You just heard it again. And that hasn't changed in the last 7 years. That has been the backbone. Jasmine, this probably is part 1. I'd love to get you back sometime. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. You are
fantastic, homie. My podcast is just 2 months old, and I am just learning from you. I'm just watching you. I was like, I get to sit with a pro today and see how it's done. Thank you.
I'm learning. This is kind of like free advice for me. So this has been really good. People are going to want, I'm sure you'll be new to a lot of the audience as well. You have your own tribe, but we're crossing the streams here. So if people want to follow you, tell us where they can find you on social, and then home for everything.
Oh, I try to make it easy as possible. You'll find me at jasminestar.com, Jasmine Star on all social platforms, and Jasmine Star Show on iTunes, Apple. I can't even say it right. iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all the goods.
The whole deal. Apple Podcasts, they keep changing the name, don't they? Anyway.
I know.
Jasmine, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.